We are recording. So, fellow Agilists, welcome to another episode in Season 2 of the Virtually Agile videocast. As always, on the podcast, we aspire for neurodiversity and the amplification of voices that are seldom heard, as well as from hearing from established thought leaders. Today's guest has a fantastic title. He is a co-founder and Chief Visualization Officer of Humble Associates. He's a fellow enterprise coach, and like me, a big believer in the use of visualization techniques. I am pleased to welcome Noel Warnell to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for having me. Lovely
Not a problem.
introduction.
And I love the t-shirt, by the way. For those that are listening, you've got read books, drink coffee, fight evil.
Yeah.
I've got a t-shirt that just says fueled by hate and coffee, which isn't true because I'm a nice person, really, but the coffee part was true.
Yeah. It's a Razor Storm t-shirt, isn't it? Not, other t-shirts are available, but
Other t-shirts are available. I love Razor Storm. They just fit me very well, so I buy them.
does that mean that you are into CrossFit?
I don't. I'm more Olympic lifting, powerlifting, that sort of thing, rather than CrossFit.
Okay, because a lot of CrossFit type people like that brand as well for similar reasons, that they make their guns look awesome like yours do right now.
Skadoosh. Yeah. Right. So, Noel, to those of our listeners who aren't familiar with your work or what you're about, please just tell us a little bit more about you and what you're about, your journey with Agile.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Thank you. I'm glad you didn't just ask, tell us what you do, because I hate that question. So yeah, what am I about? Oh God. This week, I am enjoying coaching, talking about coaching, and drawing. And I've got a lot of love for my dogs today. I don't know where that's come from, but I just feel a real bond with my dogs today. My journey with Agile started just around 10 years ago, actually. And I was incredibly fortunate to stumble across it purely by coincidence rather than any deliberate, any particular reason for me to jump into it. But I was working as a business analyst at the time, and I took on a new contract and was put onto a Scrum team, and was incredibly fortunate to have a fantastic coach and Scrum master in that team who really he'd been around the block and got the war wounds and the scars, and really was coming from a place of real experience. And so I was really fortunate to get a really kind of good start from someone who was very pragmatic in their approach and very mentoring in their just general day-to-day stance. And yeah, from a combination of the experience of working with someone like that and thinking, when I'm grown up, I'd like to be like that, and just the common sense, like the light bulb for me just went on within a couple of weeks of understanding what this thing called Agile is, which I hadn't even heard of before. And yeah, ever since then, it's like I'm not going back. That stuff I was doing before, yeah, great. It's part of my career. It's part of what makes me who I am. But this new thing, or new to me at the time, is so exciting and just feels so obvious. I want more of that. So yeah, I've been doing that ever since.
I love it, and I love the light bulb moment. I love hearing about people's light bulb moments. Mine was a bit similar. I'd heard of Agile because I'd studied it at university, and I remember my first proper involvement with it. There was a third party I was managing on a waterfall project, and a third party was delivering in Agile, and yeah, like they were saying, we're delivering in iterations, and it just made sense. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And I just became sold ever since. That was my light bulb moment. Why would you want to have to plan everything to an nth degree and then it changes and then have to replan it all? Made no sense.
Yeah, and I think I'd experienced that as well. I'd experienced being part of that process of doing these ridiculous upfront plans and them never coming true, and the whole replanning, constant replanning. One of my early contracts was for about a year and a half, and I was a business analyst at the time. This was before I discovered agility and was part of the Scrum team. And my work there, I basically produced a 100-page business requirement document I was there just over a year. It hadn't been signed off. hadn't been given to any developers. There was no, it was a document that was being talked about in steering committees and working groups. And what a ridiculous waste of flipping money. Bonkers, that's just doesn't make sense. Why would anyone do that?
And the customer doesn't care about that either, do they?
No, no. And it was for a good idea, which was text messages from one of the banks, about what was going on in your account. So a great idea. It was quite innovative at the time, but a year later, it's just a piece of paper still. It's but nothing being, just doesn't make sense.
Well, you've had your light bulb moment, you saw the lights, and now, as I understand it, through Humble Associates, you help others achieve that similar journey.
Yeah, we try. Yeah, absolutely. So we're lucky we've all worked together, and we've all had a similar journey. And so we love this stuff, and we love helping other people with this stuff. And I think what I really enjoy about working with the other guys is that we deliberately, or naturally even, are quite pragmatic, which I mentioned earlier. I kind of saw that for myself in one of the first people that introduced me to Agile, and that works. It's really important to figure out what whoever the client is, whether that's one team, 10 teams, small organization, big organization, it has to be what they need and what they are ready for and what is suitable for them at this point in time. And a lot of the work we were doing in big corporates is just, no, we know what we need, we know where we are, or so they think, and therefore just do this thing. And it was getting to the stage where that was a lot less rewarding than actually being able to play with people who are coming into this and having some of those light bulb moments for themselves, and finding a bit of energy and motivation to try something that's new for them. That is just lovely to be part of. So if we can do that all day every day, that's the dream.
Sounds like the dream indeed. Now, something I was being keen to speak with you about in particular, because I can see in the background, for those that are listening and can't see the video here, in the background you've got your whiteboard, your easel. You've obviously been doing some drawing, some visualization.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of it about this from what you've shared with your social networks, with LinkedIn and otherwise. You're a big fan of using visualization techniques, as am I. So the reason I'm keen to speak with you about it, I just want to understand from you, how do you use visualization techniques with regards to coaching, with regards to helping with agility, and what benefit have you seen it bring to those you work with?
Good question. So with regards to coaching, I use it to help kind of set the scene at the beginning. So if I'm working with an organization and they've made a commitment that they want to provide coaching for their staff, for me, that's always got to be a pull, not a push. It has to be something that people are ready for and that they want. But sometimes they don't understand what it is. So one of the first things I did a couple of years ago when I started getting into the drawing was just create an invitation that was a picture that said, this is what coaching is and what coaching isn't. And if you want some of that, let me know. And that just seemed to resonate quite quickly with people. They're like, oh, okay, fine. One, that's actually quite interesting, is a picture. People don't normally send pictures on email. And two, I get it now, and I think maybe it's something that I could be interested in or could benefit me. And one of the other things which for me felt very natural and easy was the tracking of the flow of information in meetings. So that was when I would say I kind of really got the bug, because of the level of interest that people were giving to something to me that seemed so scruffy and basic. But that's basically just capturing how many people there are in a meeting, and when people speak, if they direct it at someone else, you just draw a line between this person directly to the other person, and so on throughout the meeting, and you get to a sense of how information is being shared within that group. Is it being shared with everyone, or is it being directed all to one person? And it came from Caitlin Walker's book, From Contempt to Curiosity. There's an image in there of a a healthy meeting versus an unhealthy meeting. And I just thought, when I started working with this group, it'd be interesting to just see what's happening, because I don't understand what they're talking about. It was they're in a business area that I'm not familiar with, and the context is new to me, and the content is alien to me. So how can I still kind of try and get some value and start to observe this group in a way that works for me? But yeah, people see you just drawing lines on a bit of paper and they go mad for it. Like, oh wow, that's so cool. What's that? Really? Oh, okay, let's do a bit more of this.
What I love about it, or from my perspective at least, is that it enables a visualization of data in a different way, right? You can receive information verbally, and you can be part of that meeting yourself, and you can make note of the fact that there's got some conversations going on. But then when you see it on a screen or on a piece of paper, and you can see the lines going back and forth and where they're directed, it just allows you to visualize it differently and process it differently.
Yeah.
What I'm keen to hear from you then, what has been the kind of the consequence of that visualization for those you've worked with? You've now sat down with people, shown them the lines of communication, the perhaps the frequency of interactions, how that's gone about. What
Yeah.
next?
Yeah, great question. And that's kind of the exciting bit, because it's like, so what? You've drawn some lines on a bit of paper, and yeah, we've got a healthy or an unhealthy meeting. And so in when I one of the other things that I do is capture the type of information. So is it a question that's being asked? Is it just a conversation? Is it a challenge? Is it a joke? So, are the group laughing together? And just a little simple tally like that meant that after 3 months of working with the leadership team, I can ask a very direct question and say, why do you have this meeting every week? What is your purpose, intended purpose for this meeting? They then say something like, oh, it's a decision-making meeting. We come together to, get shit done or whatever. Like, great. Okay. Fascinating. Did you know that in the last 3 months, you have met every week for 1 hour and you have made 3 decisions? Like, what? No, that can't be right. Like, no, I've got it. I've got empirical evidence. I've got data that says that that's what's happening. And there's loads of information being shared, shit ton of that. So actually, maybe that is the purpose of the meeting, and if that's what's serving you, fine. But if you want it to be a decision-making meeting, then actually you need to change something, because that's not what's happening.
Sure.
That was really powerful. It was a moment for me as well to actually be able to say, there is a point to this kind of scribbling on a bit of paper.
Imagine it can be quite powerful, because you can't argue with data, can you? You can interpret it in different ways, but it takes emotion out of the equation. You can't argue with it to an extent. And seeing it visually in that
Yeah.
way, and that exact example. Actually, we've always thought this is a decision making meeting, but actually only 3 decisions were made. What have we been doing this whole time? What I like about it is
Yeah.
it's just another way, another tool in your arsenal of continuous improvement. Right? I am such a firm believer in challenging every meeting we have to say, is it providing value? Should I even be here? So many meetings
Mm-hmm.
people are invited to out of some sort of professional courtesy. We're just inviting you just so you're aware, and then there isn't the boundaries where someone says, "Oh, I can't not attend now. I've been invited. I can't push back." So people end up just attending these meetings, and then they end up in the meeting just working and doing other things anyway. So they're not even really adding value. They're not paying attention. How many times do you hear someone say, "Oh, can you just repeat that? I didn't quite catch it," because they've not really been paying attention. They've been focused on something else. So I love
Yeah.
I'm increasingly loving the idea of how can we continuously improve our meetings? How can we build in feedback loops into our meetings that always question, are they adding value? And I've been doing
Yeah.
this a lot of retrospectives recently, getting the team to identify how how much value the retrospective gave them. Could it be better? And what are the behaviors that would make it better so that they're
Mm-hmm.
continuously iterating on how they retro? And I think the same applies for any meeting. You could do the same for stand-ups or any standard agile ceremony. You can build a short feedback loop, the last minute or two in a meeting, just to give a fist of 5 example and say, right, was it good? Was it bad?
Yeah.
And use that as a prompt for how you could improve.
Yeah, totally. And you can even just take agile completely out of that conversation. It's just, we work together every day, and how can we get better at doing stuff? Just regardless of what it is, whether it's a sprint or a Scrum event, or if it's just, we're doing a performance review or whatever it is. It's just, that mindset, I think is the key to unlocking, real potential within individuals and an organization. You obviously talk about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. If you extrapolate that out across 5, 10, 20 people that are working together on a regular basis, then that is when things are really going to start to change. I think the other thing you mentioned at the beginning is around the neurodiversity, and I think that's also what the images add, is it triggers something different for people in their brain, because they have to engage a different part of their brain to process that information, because it's being presented in a way that they're not familiar with. So I think, I'm all for trying to do things in a different way, and very rarely even do I do the same drawing more than once, just because that's boring for me, and I'm sure it must be boring for other people. So it's great. I've used one of your retro templates recently, and the
Oh, which one?
question, it was Taco Tuesdays.
Taco Tuesday is a favorite. It's a fan favorite.
Yeah. And the question at the end, like, how would you rate this retrospective, was completely alien to that group. They've had retros, but they've just been doing liked, loved, lacked for 8 months.
Yeah.
Guys, there's a lot more out there in the world of retrospectives that can really give you a bit of energy.
Well,
But
they definitely are now. But the origin story of me creating these retros was quite simply, I was sick of those liked, learned, loved, sad, mad, glad, start, stop, continue, because that seemed to be all there were. There was a few like sailboat and hot air balloon, and there's a couple of visualization ones. But I thought, hang on, we can do better than this, and I started creating them, and then there was a good reception to it. So I started creating more, and then I found I enjoyed doing it. So it just became a thing, and now it's just something I do all the time. And what I'm really proud of is it's kind of spurred a bit of a movement for it. There's now lots of people doing the same, and it's just upping our retro game. It's just, especially in this virtual world right now, who wants to be doing the same things over and over? It helps keep people engaged. And one of the most powerful things I like about it, and it's why I was keen to discuss visualization techniques with you, is for me, it's just as you said, it can provoke a different response by engaging a different part of the brain, using a metaphor, using something visual. I was part of a community of practice the other day, and one of the icebreakers they did was using story cubes, where you're presented little cubes with pictures on them, and you use them to tell a story for anyone who's not familiar with the concept. And you can look at that, and there could be a group of 10 different people, and 10 different people will look at the same image, and they'll think of something different.
mm-hmm.
The first image that might come to their mind might be something different, because they've interpreted, in the interest of neurodiversity, they've interpreted things in different ways, and there's a beauty in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I love using retrospective templates,
Mm.
and I love using visual stimulus to provoke different thinking.
Yeah.
One of my favorite actually retro prompts recently. It was the Transformers retro. I created one based on the movie Transformers, or the TV show Transformers. I grew up watching that. I had Transformers bed sheets when I grew up, and I'm not ashamed of that. But one of them was talk about the sprint as if you were Bumblebee. So Bumblebee famously in the show can only speak with music. So you have to convey how the last sprint was using only song lyrics or music. And again, just as an abstract way of doing things, it gets people to think a little bit differently, and they tend to enjoy it as well. So
Yeah, exactly. It's just something to give a little bit, something different, something that gives a little bit of energy. And the playfulness is so important. I mean, that's
yeah,
one of our company values, is playfulness. It's doesn't have to be kind of serious, boring corporate bullshit. Those days should be long gone. And
I
the opportunity to play games and be playful and just be okay with laughing together and getting things wrong, and it's that there's not enough of that, and there's some people who've been doing great work in that space for quite a while now. So like Portia Tongue, the School of Playfulness, and she does some great keynote speeches where the first thing she does is get people to stand up and do head, shoulders, knees and toes. You see a bunch of stuffy suited middle-aged white guys typically doing head, shoulders, knees and toes. It always brings a smile to my face. But it's an important aspect that if even if one person watching this goes to work tomorrow and is a little bit more playful, you
yeah.
will get a response back to that you weren't expecting in a positive way. I promise you that.
And honestly, it's the stories that I hear about the kind of playful side of agility that I bring in that keeps me doing it as well. I hear people tell me that they did this Queen themed retrospective, and a hard nosed program manager who never cracked a smile told them that he liked Queen and he smiled and he got involved with it. It's just stories like that that make me keep wanting to do it. And
Mm.
my crowning achievement with regards to playfulness at work was getting a board of directors, middle-aged white guys, C-suite, all throwing paper airplanes around an office to conceptualize definition of done in front of everyone else, and they were like, "What's going on?" Or that everyone,
Mhm.
the colleagues, like, "What's going on?" They're all doing this
Yeah,
just because I was bringing playfulness into the workplace and showing them that it was okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's important. It's underestimated for sure. But
Right. Next topic I'm keen to talk with you about was systems thinking, because I know this is something that
oh,
you've talked about in the past. So how would you describe systems thinking, and how do you feel it fits in with the sort of enterprise agility or the coaching that you do?
yeah, critical to both of those things for sure, because each and every one of us is our own system and is part of multiple other systems, whether that's your relationship with your partner, your family, your kids, your dogs, your work colleagues. They are all systems. When we talk about systems thinking, it's about the environment. Well, for me, it's about the environment that you're in and how you interact with the environment and other things in that environment. And so, what I love about this area is that it's so simple and yet it's so complex. So the simplicity of the idea that if you get a group of 10 people together and you find something that works and you try and repeat that with another group of 10 people, that's a different group of people, you're probably going to get a different result because that is a different system, even though you're doing exactly the same thing. And I think when it comes to enterprise agility, you're looking typically at multiple teams, sometimes across multiple departments, different locations. The system is very complex when you look at it holistically, and you have to consider that in your work. You have to understand that a small change here is going to have an impact, maybe over there, and maybe not for a week or a month, but in a couple of months you're going to see that impact. So it's really, for me, I really enjoy trying to consider the whole and the impact of the little tweaks here and there that we're always encouraging people to do for continuous improvement, and seeing how that impacts how the system behaves.
I like the way you've described that. And to me, I often describe my role as a coach is doing everything I can to grow that system, to put a system or an environment in place where people can be, I guess, their best selves on their best day and then be supported on their worst day. That's a phrase that I've learned recently that I'm absolutely not
Mm.
claiming, but one that I'm so on board with. It very much resonates with me. And yeah, the whole systemic side of things, that's what I'm here for, just trying to systemically improve things. Now, what I'm keen
Yeah.
to, I guess, delve a little bit further with you on
Sorry,
is how.
sorry to interrupt, Chris.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Just one thing on that bubbled up that I think feels important is just around the kind of the one-to-one coaching work. So a lot is spoken about self-awareness and helping people to become more aware of their impact on their environment and their
Mhm.
colleagues and their staff and family and so on. And I think for me that is also a really good example. It's, yes, when you consider multiple teams and so on, the system gets much bigger. But actually, even just considering yourself as a part of the system and acknowledging that any small change you make individually is going to have an impact somewhere else, I think that's a really key element of coaching, and actually something to be respected as well when you're coaching another individual.
Mm. There's a concept I remember hearing about that, I guess that's linked to that, and I think it articulates or demonstrates what you've just described quite well. Is you kind of come into the office one morning, you're in a bad mood, you've allowed your bad mood to influence one other person, and then they kind of take that away, and it just spreads, and that's just one person interacting with a bunch of other people, and it's just spread and changed the system just by you allowing your own personal circumstance to influence everything
Mm-hmm.
else. And I remember. Um, hearing someone say the way they handled that is they were transparent and vulnerable about it. They just admitted and said, look, I'm having a bad day today. I don't want to allow my bad day to influence you. So just ahead of time, if I do seem off or anything like that, it's nothing that you've done, or it's not, I don't want you to be concerned or anything like that. I'm not my best self today. And
Mm.
being vulnerable about that, I think, is just so powerful.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah, it is.
where I was going, I guess, with my previous line of thought, and I tend to go off on tangents. We were talking about this systems thinking and I guess visualizing progress, particularly in this enterprise-wide situation when you've got teams of teams,
Mm-hmm.
lots of changes happening in lots of different areas. How do you, and what techniques do you subscribe to enable you to visualize progress when you are working at that kind of scale?
That is a good question. That is a very good question. There's so many elements to that, because there's one is, the whole topic of measurement and measures. How do you measure the benefit of and success of coaching is a huge topic. So having a conversation with someone about that this morning, who's stepping into a new role, and they're saying, well, how can I, as a full-time employee who's been given the opportunity to do this, how can I demonstrate after 6 months and a year that I am succeeding in that?
Is this the coaching ROI concept? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So they saw a post I put out on that last week, and I said, "Oh, maybe this is a bit timely. Let's have a chat about how I might be able to apply some of that." So we'll see how she gets on over the next few months. But she already had a bunch of great ideas around that. So sometimes it's just saying your thoughts out loud and having someone else say, "Yeah, that sounds sensible," is enough, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, sorry, I've forgotten the question.
There's a question around how you, or what techniques you subscribe to enable you to visualize progress. Like when you've got teams of teams, lots of systems,
Yeah.
they're all interacting. There might be multiple experiments running in parallel.
Yeah.
What techniques do you subscribe to enable you to track progress, whether it's
Yeah.
positive or negative?
Yeah, I think from a visualization point of view, just draw an arrow pointing up. That's normally enough. And the
Saying profit.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe a little zigzag in it. But I think, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you a man of a similar sentiment in that data and evidence is critical, but how you go about getting it and what you try and get is important. So there's no point just gathering a shitload of data for the sake of it if it's not meaningful, and if it's not going to change anything. Um, you should only be getting data that tells you something that means you can do something as a result of it. So trying to identify that for an organization is key as early as possible. And the way best to do that is just to ask them, why are you paying for me or us as humbles to come in and help you? What is it that you think you're going to get or that you want? And then can we come up with a way now, before we even start the work, of saying, what would success look like? And sometimes that's, a number, and sometimes it's just sentiment. There was a short 5-question survey that I created for a small group of stakeholders, and it was just, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the best, 0 being the worst. How do you think you're currently collaborating across these 3 areas? And how confident are you in your role in, an agile environment? Some really simple questions, but 11 people, whatever, came back with data, and then we just sat on that. Well, I sat on that. 4 months later, send out the same survey, and it's just people's opinion about how they personally feel. But when you look at it in comparison before and after, there is a slight increase. Like, great, that tells me things are going in the right direction. Is that because of the work I'm doing? Maybe, maybe not. I don't care. The fact is, you wanted these improvements. You're getting these improvements somehow. So that's got to be a good thing. It does become tricky. This is what I'm learning as someone who's new to running their own business, which is a whole different world. Sometimes there is more pressure to be able to evidence, hard data evidence that I'm spending this much money and you are giving me value for that. But I think that contracting at the beginning is critical.
All right, like the answer. Thank you. I subscribe to kind of Spotify style health checks. I say style health checks. I don't tend to
Yeah,
copy them exactly, but what I like about those, and
yeah,
in fact the form or format you've described there, is it's their opinion rather than anyone else's. Right. So you've
hmm,
asked them to rate how things are going with regards to a few questions, just like the health check for Spotify. It's the team's opinion,
yeah,
and you get that as a data point, and you check it again quarterly or whatever time frame you choose, and then you say, well, have they improved? And if there's improvement,
yeah,
great. There we go. You can see progress. You can see a trajectory, but you can also then see, right, where are you not happy, and what are you going to do next time to try and improve that situation, both at the team level
yeah,
within their sphere of influence, but also at the organizational level. If there are trends across multiple teams experiencing pain in the same areas, how you can then help them systemically remove those blockers. That's
yeah,
why I like these
absolutely.
techniques. And you can also, if you really want to, you can crunch some numbers behind it. I've been doing this recently as well.
Yeah,
When I first started with a company I'm currently working for, they had nothing like this. So I put it in place, September last year, started doing it for all their squads, and it provided your baseline, your beginning data point. And then we say 9 months later, you've got an 80% reduction in areas that you guys have said are red, right? That's huge progress. You've got a 60% reduction in areas that are in a downwards trajectory. So things are moving in the right direction. And this is your words, not some external consultant, not anyone doing some sort of maturity model on you. It's
yeah,
what you guys as a team think. And that's, I think, is so powerful.
yeah, absolutely. I love the Spotify health checks. I also use that all the time for teams. And there's a leadership version of that as well, which is really nice. You can do it for leadership teams, and even just the experience of them doing it. Sometimes they get really kind of excited about,
Yeah,
because it's very often they don't take the time to stop and just think about how they're doing and how they're communicating with each other. And so it can be quite novel actually, and get quite a good impact, even just doing it a couple of times. But yeah, I love it. And I think the other thing is, we're talking about where things are going in an upward direction. I think the other thing, you touched on it briefly, is if something is falling off a cliff, then that is equally important,
mm,
and that allows you to ask a very direct question of whoever the leadership team are, or depending on how autonomous the teams are, ask the team themselves. There's a problem here. This, you're telling you've surfaced this problem is happening
mm,
for you. So what do you want to do about that? Because if you do nothing, then nothing's going to happen.
completely. I'm always there's a few certain phrases that I'm always saying, and my listeners are probably going to be hearing this again and again because I say it all the time. But taking no action is a decision. One of my favorite things to say, right? Because if you are aware that something isn't quite right and you do nothing about it, it's going to remain the same way.
Hmm.
Nothing's going to change, and you're probably going to be frustrated about it again anyway.
Hmm.
There's a radical level of autonomy that Tesla has in the way they do agile, that Joe Justice was describing, and he was saying it's built into their culture that everybody has the empowerment and authority to fix something if they see it wrong. Doesn't matter if it's outside of your job role. Doesn't matter if it's in a different department. If you see something wrong, just go and fix it. And I think that's
Mm.
amazing. If we could build that level of empowerment and just a desire to improve things into more places, more teams, would do very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Brings
I
me on
mean
to my
that
next
that makes
question. Oh, please go ahead.
it makes me very happy. Yeah, no, I just love that. I love that story. The level of trust that shows
Yeah,
creates trust. That's one of
it
those
does.
self-fulfilling prophecies or whatever. Yeah, just more of that. Everyone, do more of that.
Mm. So it brings me on to my next question. And another thing you are, I guess, a believer in is saying no and the power of it. So
Mm.
why do you feel that people should master the ability to say no?
Oh, because people take on too much. Bottom line, yeah, people think they have to be seen to be taking on lots of stuff, and that if they're really busy, it means they're really important and their job is safe. I can tell you from first-hand experience that that is bullshit. Because I was always busy. I was always taking on, putting my hand up. Yes, I'll get involved with that. Yes, I'll get involved with that. And I got fired. So it's not just about it's about, so many things, but you really need to be clear with yourself about where your boundaries are, because you can't do all of those things probably, and you'll end up at best doing a mediocre job of a few things, as opposed to a bloody awesome job of, less stuff.
Mhm.
This is a bit ironic me saying this, because I'm one of these people who just gets involved. I still have this tendency to jump in and get involved with lots of different things, but I've had to learn over the years to those boundaries. Like, what's my personal boundary? What's the signals that I'm starting to get a bit anxious or overwhelmed with things? And how do I then do something about that to reduce it? But in a simple, very atypical work environment, there's just a couple of really simple things that you can do to get into the habit of saying no without even necessarily saying no and feeling bad about it, but turning it into a more useful two-way conversation that can really make a difference for not only for you, but also for your relationship with your peers and with your managers. It's openness, authenticity. Be authentic. Don't be scared to say I've got too much on, or if I do this, it means I can't do that. That's a very real conversation, and there's no value in hiding behind this charade of I'm really busy, I've got all this stuff to do, and working 12, 14 hours a day. That's just not sustainable.
What's amazing about this topic in particular is we as agile coaches and agile professionals, we're coaching our teams to find their sustainable pace, the velocity that works for them, doesn't burn them out. We encourage work in progress limits and things like that to optimize flow efficiency. And so often we fall guilty about ourselves, and we realize, oh, we've taken on too much. And we almost need to apply that same, we need to turn that mirror inwards,
Mm-hmm.
or onwards towards ourselves, and say, hang on, am I taking a bit too much? And what I liked about what you said there is over time you learn your triggers. You become mindful of when you start to struggle a little bit, when you've taken on too much, and then when you should be able to push back and say, well, I could take this on, but this would fall aside as a consequence. I've always loved the analogy, and it's the same one I use when it comes to coaching teams to find their sustainable pace. I'll hold up a couple of glasses, and one will be full of water, and I'll just say, right, this is your capacity for a sprint or a time frame, and I'll keep pouring, and I'll keep
Yeah.
doing it until it overflows. And they was like, what are you doing? It's flowing everywhere. So, well, that's what happens when you take on too much. That is your capacity. It's not never ending. And I love that technique, particularly when it comes to management. Give them 2 coffee cups and say, right, that's a sprint, that's a time frame. Keep pouring, and
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee they'll stop before they make a mess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And some of them have probably seen the video with the pebbles and then the sand and then the water.
Yeah,
Keep
of
trying to
course.
jam stuff in, but
Yeah.
that's kind of missing the point. The point is you have to be deliberate about the stuff that you choose to put in, so that it doesn't overflow, it doesn't break the glass, and that it is a mixture, a balance of things that do go together. I think a lot of the community of coaches that I'm lucky to be part of, it is a very caring, nurturing bunch of people. I think that's that's helpful in the work that we do. But yeah, I completely agree with you. It's also important to stop and turn that back on yourself on a regular basis and
Mm.
say, actually, am I doing too much? Am I going too fast? Am I no longer at a sustainable pace? Yeah, love it.
And when it comes to that, something I've personally developed, and it's something I've been doing more so over the past few years, is just doing retrospectives for once, solo perspectives. I'm a big believer in retrospectives, and there's
Yeah,
no reason you can't do it yourself. Just even
yeah,
if it's on a daily journaling or a weekly basis, just sit down. How am I feeling? What's my workload like? What have I learned in the past week? What do I want to try differently? What's helped me move towards where I want to be? What's moving me further away? These
mhm,
sorts of questions you can ask yourself, and then get it outside of your head, because that's part of the problem. If it's stuck
yeah.
inside your head, you can't remember exactly how you felt a week ago, and it can just be a great way of continuously improving in your own respect.
And it takes 5 minutes. On Friday afternoon, you can just open your calendar for the week, have a look back. What happened? What went well? Um, what's missing? What am I not making enough time for? It's not just the stuff you are doing. What am I not doing? yeah, is my diary completely crammed the whole way through? Do I want that next week? Probably not. So yeah, I love that. I'm a big fan of that. It's something I've only started doing myself recently, but yeah, I concur. The power of a short reflection on a regular basis is very, very powerful. Which,
Absolutely.
no, again, it's ironic. We know this stuff because we do it with teams all the time, but
All the
actually,
time.
yeah, to stop and do that for yourself is equally important.
Very much. Right. Given the theme is about of this podcast is about amplifying newer voices.
Mm.
Noel, who do you think is out there that's doing great work that I should reach out to and just get involved in the show?
Wow, that is a good question. You've already got a bunch of people who I admire and I'm lucky enough to know. Um, and again, the typical coach's answer, it depends. So if you were looking for someone who is just got a beautiful story and the way that they talk about facilitation, you can tell it's just in their blood. There's a guy called Francis Lallerman, who I would recommend. He's good friends with Tobias. They've done some work together. I know you've spoken with Tobias. I think when it comes to if you're interested in coaching and coaching individuals, um, there's a lady called Kirsten Deerhoff. I can send you her name separately, but she runs a business called Solutions Academy. And yeah, I was lucky enough to find them and do my ACC and PCC training with them. And she just consistently puts out fantastic content every week. There's an email that helps you as a coach learn something new or think about something different. And I think people like you who are constantly creating things and giving things to the community, I just love that. So yeah, kudos to you.
All right. Well, thank you for the recommendations. All right. Final question, conscious of time, and it's
Yes.
the one about retrospective. So I am now, I think I'm just over 50 50 themed retrospectives, and I'm planning to release 52 in total this year. I think this week's one will be number 28. So, which new retrospective would you add to my backlog? It could be about anything. I know you mentioned Taco Tuesday. You did that one not long ago. Is there anything that is in your desire that you'd love to see a retrospective about?
Yeah. Dogs. So what?
Dogs.
Yeah, something to do with like what would your dog have done?
Okay.
Something about dogs. There's something probably in there about dog shit. So there's probably something in there about sniffing in places you shouldn't be sniffing, and I think you can be quite playful with that.
Yeah. I did release a cat meme retrospective recently featuring like Grumpy Cat was making us grumpy in the last iteration, and
Okay.
Ceiling Cat is watching you. Where are we cutting corners? Yeah, there's all sorts of things. I'm sure there's probably a million images of dogs on the internet that I could find and convert into some sort of metaphorical way of improving a team.
Yeah.
So I'll work on a dog theme retrospective.
Yeah. And here's an offer for you if you want it. Is that I'd be happy to pair up with you on that because I love
Oh,
hearing.
let's do it. Let's co-create.
Yeah, love
Let's
it.
create one together. That's even better. All right. I will count that as done. That's happening. Okay. Any final thoughts to share with any of the listeners from you, Noel?
No, I think, well, yes. So, no, but it doesn't work. So, yes, I would say something that's really helped me over the last few years in my career, and especially in facilitation, which I think is something we do a lot as coaches, as team coaches, is to make sure that you're always considering the people and the team that you are facilitating something for, and remind yourself that what you're doing, the role you're playing, is for them. And sometimes that means letting go. Well, often it should mean that you are letting go of your control, and that can be hard. And I've struggled with that. But if you can learn to really step back and let go of that control and really empower the group to do more things for themselves, and you just become the guide, that is truly liberating.
All right, wonderful sentiment to leave us on. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and experiences, Noel. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. And to all of the listeners, don't stop believing.
You should sing that as the outro.